Hello, friends, amigos, compadres, companions, uh, mates, as it's England, or blokes. They also go with blokes sometimes. Hello, blokes. My name is host Eric, and I'm the host of Talking with Famous People. I'm not typically somebody who uses the term blokes a lot, but today I'm feeling blokey. So I wanted to talk about the state of typology, and I actually have a little bit of a document here. And it's funny, I heard Skygear instructing 0000 regarding falsification protocols. So the thing is, like I am much more like Skygear than I am like 0000, which is to say, I am interested in determining exactly what comprises falsification. I don't know what I'm hearing. Hi. There is a debate between Doug and Xavier in TwFP Discord. Really? What are they debating about?
I think it was your mom's face.
That's a common source of dispute between people. So 0000 likes to make. This is one thing that makes me think he might be right about that person I typed as ENTJ, that they might be INTJ. The one thing that makes me think they might be right is I tend to think 0000 is probably an INTJ, and he is remarkably TI ignoring sometimes. The claims you make about your testing breakthroughs and stuff are outrageous. You have to. It's like I didn't even suggest that there was a skills-based polar test until I tried it out a shit ton of times. And because I anticipate somebody like Skygear coming and saying, okay, well, what's the falsification metric? So the one thing I want to do here is acknowledge right off the bat that this lady that I posted her video at 3 p.m. today, her name was Amy, and I typed her as ENTJ. She is somebody who's more or less met the falsification criteria I set. At least at initial blush, I would say she would test, by my conventional understanding of the polar test, positive for polar in two areas, SI and TI. It's hard to interpret her TI results as in any way meaningfully distinct from polar results. So I saw that 0000 had defined polar as that which you can't do in real time or something like that. But I mean, I don't. I'm not sure where he pulls these definitions out of, but I'm pretty sure it's his ass. Which is fine, because I got to give him credit too. He has sparked in me a lot of new thinking and also enthusiasm for typing people, because he's brought up some questions that either pointed out or were critical in me finding a directionality I think will be proved pretty promising. So there's a couple of those specifically that I want to mention. The first is the idea that you can test somebody's NI by asking them to create a scenario to explain a situation. So the one I tried with Mackenzie, I said, you come home from work one day and you discover there's a naked man hanging by a rope dead in your bathroom, and in the other room across the hall, down the hall, there's the lights keep flickering on and off as though somebody maybe were switching the light switch on and off, or as though they were short or something. Come up with a scenario to explain that scene. If the hypothesis is correct, NI-polar will be very hesitant or fight against coming up with a single explanation, given that they don't feel like there's any particular, there's nothing pointing them to what's correct or not correct. It's also a good way to test extrovert intuition, I think, possibly. But the other one, and the one that I suspect is going to prove to be an actual FI polar test of sorts, is, although I don't think it's going to be ungameable, and gameability is a critical element in things, but is this idea that you ask a succession of questions that poses moral choices for people that are neither of which are good or neither of which are bad. So you say, which would you rather do, break someone's arm or steal all the money in their bank account? Now, most people would say, well, I'd rather break someone's arm. I mean, I'd rather steal their money because breaking their arm is doing physical damage or something. Somebody else might say, well, I'd rather steal their money because if I'm going to do harm to them, I might as well get something out of it. Right? And I don't get anything out of breaking their arm. Another such question is, would you rather save 5 60-year-old women or 1 6-year-old girl? And then you try to work towards things that are mostly equivalent. Would you rather save little Susie from drowning or little Bobby from being mauled to death by a bear? So, which one do you want to save?
Questions.
Yeah, who would you save? Little Jenny, who's going to drown to death? You're standing right between the two of them. You've got a can of bear spray, so you're confident if you run that direction, you're going to get there just in time to spray the bear and prevent the boy from being mauled. But concurrently, the girl will drown. Or you're confident you can swim out there, save the girl, but by the time you get back to shore, the boy will have been mauled by the bear. Now, which one do you prefer to do? Who do you prefer to save? What's your answer, Rachel?
Oh, I wasn't expecting that. Okay, so I could either save the boy or the girl?
And the girl's going to drown to death, the boy's going to be mauled to death by a bear.
Shit. I'm a okay swimmer, so I probably would save the girl. Because I know that I can swim.
Right. Less chance of you being harmed than by the bear.
Yeah.
That's a good reason. The TE answer to, the way I set up the question, Grass Eater, I set it up so that I tell you can be confident about it, but you can choose to say, well, nevertheless, I am more scared by the bear. This is the interesting thing, Skyger. You say the TE answer to the 5-year-old girl versus 6-year-old woman is obviously the 5-year-old girl, because most old people lack energy to do a lot of stuff. They're past their prime, can no longer have kids. That's interesting. The answer I would give to that question is the 5-year-old girl, because the 60-year-olds have already had a chance to live their lives for a goodly chunk of it. And so in other words, I'd rather deny 5 people dessert and have 6 people eat a full meal than let 5 people have a full meal plus dessert and 1 person get nothing, or get just a taste of the soup before they die. If you think about a life as a 4-course meal or something.
I'm on that train with you.
So that's basically my justification. Is I guess rooted in a sense of fairness, like everybody gets their turn up to bat and she can get hers. And yours is more TE answer. I agree, Sky Gary. No, that's exactly the distinction I'm trying to get to, which is that The idea that 60-year-old women lack energy to do stuff past their prime, and can't have any more kids, and are likely to leave the workforce, stop being so productive, stop being a productive member of the workforce. Those are all very TE reasons to meow the meow.
I love your meows.
I also really I like the question of the what's the one that he put of the pharmacy murder one.
Oh yeah.
It's a weird question, and I really like the way that he reacted to my response to that question, which was he didn't want me to respond that way for some reason, because that's not how he had envisioned the question being responded to. But of course, the way he had written it, if you're going to write a good question, you have to be able to take whatever response you get and have it mean something. You can't say no. You can't answer it that way. Because I thought, okay, well, what's the most likely answer for the murders here, or the deaths at the pharmacy? And it seemed to me there's too many for it to be coincidence. So it's almost certainly an organized pattern of murder. You're given the clues that the clothes are beach clothes for all these people. So, and then of course, the other thing that amused me about that question is it was such an incredibly long story question. Like, and some, I don't know what type that guy is, but that's very poor classroom TE. So like, if you're a classroom teacher, you've got maybe 50 minutes of time with students, and what was I saying? I lost my train of thought when I read Skygear saying, Grassier and I disagree with your self-typing. With who's self-typing? So, okay. Oh, you disagree with Grass Eater self-typing. Oh, I see. That's very confusing, because it says the at, but then it says Grass Eater and I disagree with your self-typing, right?
Yeah, so I was thinking that they were disagreeing over your saying that you're an ENTP.
Right. Whereas really what he's saying is Grass Eater and I disagree with your self-typing. So in other words, Grass Eater said meow, 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 and I meow, meow, meow. And he goes, well, and I disagree with your typing.
Boom.
So that's why that was so confusing.
Yeah, that is. It could be taken either way.
Very, very, very confusing sentence. Skygear. You lose 5 points for confusing sentence writing. That's what you get. It's one of the consequences. Well, that's why I see. That's the other thing is I don't know if you're playing your character right now. So I thought that was very possible that you would say, like, pretend to be an ESFP right now and say that. So that's actually, I don't think it's contradictory, that sentence. I think it's just naturally, because you put and at first and your name before it. It's just naturally going to be misinterpreted as having two subjects rather than being the continuation of a previous sentence.
Can that be the continuation of your previous sentence?
Sure, darling. I think maybe later on after the stream we'll have a continuation of our previous sentence that we were having earlier. It was a good sentence.
It was.
One of my very favorite sentences.
Aww.
Since the invention of sliced bread. It does mean it does mean talking to said person. But by the time you get to the end of said person's name and it's immediately followed by an and, you forget that at had been there. You see these two things?
Yeah, I didn't see that.
Look, the at and the and mutually exclude each other inherently. So just sort of intuitively, you you toss the at when you get to the end because it's so much more familiar form, Mia and I, mia.
Facts.
Nam sa. Do you nam ska? Do you nam sa sky gear? Do you nam sa? That means, do you know what I'm saying? Nam sa is a word that needs to be, because do you know what I'm saying is too many words. So we need a shortcut. And that shortcut is nam sa. Yes, I know, Jane. I know what at means. Okay. I'm not confused by the fact that at is what happens when you click the person's name. Like if I'm trying to respond to Grass Eater, it naturally puts an at in front of it. Can you change your channel name to add famous people? It's a lot shorter. Well, TwFP is the way to shorten talking with famous people. But see, talking with famous people is not a sort of FE verbal insertion. Okay, why not? Oh. Here's the thing to remember is one thing I've learned about is to be very careful about making very bold, conclusive statements about, okay, well, yeah, I mean, I would say her SI did seem to test better than Polar, but I guess I didn't get, I feel like I needed to extract more information about SI to be determinate as to whether or not it was 8th plot or 7th. But I agree with you. That's a good argument for something other than ENTJ. I just don't know what to do with the complete TI collapse, So, I mean, the thing is she seemed most polar at was TI. She seemed more polar at TI than FE.
Yeah.
Now, I agree TI is the least reliable of the skills tests. And the reason it's the least reliable, it's the most influenced by past experience, and it's the most gameable or learnable. I mean, I wouldn't call that SI ignoring. No. 5th slot SI is, thanks, Raymond Muniz. You're the best. He says, my morning radio talk show made a very compelling argument to donate to sick children in need this year, and he thought of me.
That's so nice.
That's fantastic. I am a sick child.
He is a sick child in need.
You think Xavier Reeves might be an INTP? Sky Gear, I appreciate your scrutiny and skepticism and stuff. Okay, well, look. Oh. That is one possible criterion by which to measure it, right? So it is true that not wanting to continue trying the TI questions, in other words, okay, let's stop this or something, is one possible way to measure a person's relationship with TI. I don't think that that's any more definitive than the current lack of bright line we have, but I mean, I'd have to verify it across lots of instances. This is what I mean by making outrageously bold claims all the time. It's like, I'm not used to operating like this. I appreciate your good ideas. I really do. And I appreciate the shot of enthusiasm that you've put into my relationship with cognitive functions and typing people. And I also appreciate, most of all, that you represent what I consider to be the right way to approach typology if I'm some very smart intuitive out there who's come across typology. in my opinion, the right way to approach it is for that person to come in and say, okay, it looks like Eric cleaned this up and got it right, more or less. So now but he's not doing anything with it because he's a retard or something. So let's acknowledge that and stop fighting that, everything's equal. My random bullshit is equal to Eric's good thinking. No, it's not. It's like those other people, like, Dave Superpowers typing that person as like an ENTP nurture subtype or something like that.
God.
When he was so obviously not capable of using any introvert thinking at all. That makes me say, yeah. Yeah, I do charge a fee to type people. It's a low price of $100. And at the end of the session, you'll get 4 full letters. Yeah, ENTP FI DOM subtype, right? I mean, I do have to give Benjamin credit, though. That was hilarious when that guy yesterday said, does that make sense? Said, no. Because I was perfectly ready to be mad at him for playing along with this person's bullshit, and he didn't at all. So that was cool.
Yeah, that was cool.
Eric, and the basis the person gives up is due to the fact they determine they cannot do it, not because they do not want to do it. So, I mean, does that apply to FI as well? Because I don't think I give up on answering FI questions. I think we have trouble maybe identifying what comprises a way to push on FI in the same fashion as TI. Hi, Abraham. Well, what's up? Raymond arrived and came roaring with thunder with a super chat, which is very much appreciated. And that was unexpected and nice. And is here, saying things. Oh, you might let me type you if I pay you $100. Huh? Oh, an FI test. So the idea that an FI test is that you ask them which of 2 more or less equal moral choices, either bad or good, do you prefer? And so if I were to say, there's a child drowning and a child about to be mauled by a bear, which one do you say? Well, probably a lot of people say, I'd say the child drowning because I don't want to get mauled by the bear. And I'm not that confident in my ability to stop mauling, even if you tell me I have a can of bear spray. Some people might say, so that would be kind of a FITE approach to the question. Some people might say, well, I'd say the boy being mauled by the bear because that's more likely to. This is the kind of shit I'm talking about. Oh. I mean, I don't know if the FI test. I have no idea about the FI test yet. I don't have an FI test yet. I'm still working it out. I'm still trying it. I just tried a couple of things. It's like you want to draw conclusions so fast. I just don't operate like that. But anyway, somebody might say, I can imagine myself saying, save the bear because it'll make a bigger deal in the news, and people will be like, what a hero that guy is. That might be one reason. Or somebody might say, I'd have to look both children in the eye and make a decision. Tony might say that. I don't know. I've only asked the question a couple of times. See, this is the thing. I can think of all the different possible ways in which persons might answer these things. So I'm not jumping to any conclusions that I know in advance precisely how that's going to play out. It's like questions reveal things to me, and after a long time, they keep revealing the same thing to me. Then I usually talk about it. But because is pushing the action here by coming up with the strategies and stuff here, and you know, some of his ideas I'm mushing about, and some of them, you know, it's like, what is supposed to be the answer? Oh, what is supposed to be the answer to the pharmacy thing? Because the thing that made me most interested about the pharmacy question was your response to my answer to it. Save him from the bear because you get to save him from the bear. You can kill the bears. You get a lot of bear meat and pelts, which entitles money as well as utility. Sure. I don't think that, but I think it's unlikely. You know, first of all, you're not going to kill the bear. You're going to escort it with bear spray. But even if you were going to kill the bear, I would expect that you wouldn't be allowed to take its carcass home with you.
Excuse me.
This quarterly report is not on earnings. It's on progress in solving typological questions. So I actually have a document here that has things I was going to talk about in this. Rachel and I started to make a video, but then we decided to live stream.
We got another package from you, I believe.
Oh yeah, we do. We have a package to open too. So one of the conclusions to be drawn is okay. So like this is an interesting point, and I want to use this as an example. OOO says pharmacy question is you're looking at the causal links. So I could have built my story off of the fact that it happens every time in the afternoon. Instead, I built my story off of the fact that it happened, that there's a commonality of clothing. But also a commonality of time of the month, which is assuming that he, okay, I'll join the Discord server in a little bit. Okay, cool. Well, he's actually getting an operation right now. Did I tell Delilah about what? The Discord server? I don't think so, but I will mention it to her. She probably, it's like she don't expect anything. She's not, whatever. My suggestions fall on deaf ears, usually with Delilah.
They're different.
Okay, but so you said that's an SI answer, that I took an element from the story and came up with a scenario, right? So what would be another way of answering the question that doesn't do that approach? So you've highlighted one possible approach, which is to take an element from the story and build an explanation around that. Okay, and it could be the time of day, or it could be what they're wearing. It could be like I did also the time of month I considered in my story. It could be the location, the fact that they're all at a pharmacy. I can try to include all of those things in my story. So what would be the alternative to that? No, I came up with one answer. My answer was a single explanation that incorporated multiple factors. Well, so which part of my one answer was SI and which part was NI? Okay, again, which part of my answer was SI and which part was NI? How would you distinguish, like, what would a different kind of answer look like? So I get that somebody else might say, build their story around the fact that it was always afternoon, and I didn't use that factor in my story, okay? So what would it mean if somebody used that factor instead? So, why do you have so much trouble answering my fucking questions? But what does it look like? Give me an example. Give me an example of two conflicting answers to that. Exemplify them. An SI person would say, blah, 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 blah. An NI person would say blah, 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 blah. So, but what would that sound like? What would they say instead? Of what I did. What would they say instead? You tell me they can't put together clues from a scene of crime because they're SI polar? So what would an SI polar person say when presented with that? Well, what wouldn't they say? Because, it's like if you can't, they either would not answer the question or they would they keep trying to use their experience to create a hypothesis. So you're telling me that an ENFJ or an ENTJ, when presented with that pharmacy question, would not be able to come up with a scenario to explain it that incorporated elements from the story because they wouldn't remember what you said in the story, or what? Okay, I still don't understand what you're saying. Oh, I really don't. It's like if you're trying to say that test, ESTJ would not be able to use their understanding of the city to explain why the murders keep happening. Okay, so that's not SI polar, that's NI polar. So maybe you just misspoke. That's why I'm so confused. You said an SI polar person cannot use their experience. But ESTJs and ESFJs are NI polar. Eric, how do you test TE polar? The same test both NI and SI polar? So how would NI and SI polar people answer it differently? Would they both refuse to answer the question or be unable to? Because I like the hypothesis that NI polar won't generate a scenario for something, won't settle on a scenario. Okay, but Jesus fucking Christ. This is where you're not using good TE. So what I'm saying is we have a basic principle we're trying to distinguish between here. You're saying that you need to articulate very precisely what the question is doing. Is presenting a scenario, is presenting a set of facts in evidence, quote unquote, and asking you to create a scenario to explain them. Okay, so that's what the question is doing. Now, we have a variety of possible answers. We've identified now one kind of answer plus one kind of non-answer. So the kind of answer you've identified is one in which you take elements from the story and create a scenario out of those elements. And you've now made the claim that both SI and NI polar people will not be able to do that. But if that's the case, then what is the specific skill common to Ni polar and Si polar that it's testing? Okay, but listen, I understand there are multiple questions, but you're not hearing my words, obviously, or not thinking or not listening, because I'm asking you just about the scenario creation, okay? Only about that. Forget your questions. Your questions are meaningless. The test idea is generate a scenario to explain these facts and evidence. Now, how are people going to respond? That's the question. That's the only question that is of any matter at all here. Now, people are going to respond to that question in different ways. What do their responses mean if they respond like meow, meow, meow? The problem that you have is it doesn't work like what you say, right? So it's like you got irritated because of the way I answered the question the other day. Like, no, you can't answer it like that. But you have to, the question is generate a scenario. Whether you ask a bunch of specific questions thereafter, if once that initial thing has been done, first of all, before you move forward beyond that, how do you analyze their response to the prompt, generate a scenario? Okay, so, but do you have any explanation as to why you need both in order to pass it? In other words, what specific mechanism that's required for both is that is required to pass this test is implicit to both functions? No, I'm saying what specific mechanism that's required to pass this test is implicit to both functions? So these are the questions you have to ask before you start making these crazy claims you make. If you want to be able to make those kind of, okay, but my hypothesis would be that NI tool users would have no problem doing that, coming up with a scenario. Okay, so look, and this is what I'm talking. This is called mission creep. Mission creep is a serious problem in typology. From an extroverted intuitor's perspective, believe me, I know it. I understand that mission creep is a serious problem. You've added in an element at the end of this story in which now it's not just a scenario that you have to come up with to explain what happened, but you're also under suspicion for the murders now. So how does that change the question? How does that change the question? The goal is to get the question to be as narrow as possible, to test as narrow and well-defined a mechanism as possible. Okay, so what's the other part besides creating a scenario that explains it? What's the other part? Who are just a bunch of dumb primates? Why ask dumb questions about the morality? Like, one time somebody came in here and asked the dumbest question about morality. His name was Water Zero, and he said, "Why ask dumb questions about morality?" Except he put a "the" in before morality. That's what made his question so dumb. And about morality. Then he condemned himself by saying it's just plain stupid. And then used the wrong pronoun. When he meant to say, "I'm just a dumb primate," he said, "They're just a bunch of dumb primates." So, what a mess, Water Zero. You are a mess. Thanks, Not Dead Jay. Appreciate it. Okay, so what's the other part? For God's sakes, why is it like pulling teeth to get you to answer questions about anything? What's the SI part? To me, this is clearly an NI test. I'll look at the test right now. I'm seeing what it says here. So here are the questions. What time did all these murders take place? In other words, create a scenario. Why are you going there? Create a scenario. Oh, those are actually. Oh, so now you changed it to a reading comprehension test? Except it's a listening comprehension test? Okay, I understand. It's okay. Here's the thing. Oh. I agree with you that remembering details from stuff read aloud to them is a huge challenge for ENTJs and ENFJs potentially. I suspect that you're going to prove to be right about this again. But we're a long way from actually proving you right about it. I think that's a good way to test it. It's the same basic mechanism that's in play, presumably, when you are keeping track of the events that you've engaged in throughout the day, right? So except it standardizes it into a different approach. It still needs to be read aloud, though. It still needs to be read aloud. If you let the person themselves read it, then it'll be a different matter for ENTJs and ENFJs. So note that how you deliver information matters as well. For the lady yesterday and for everybody, I tried to put the rat test, let them look at it. People seem to perform much differently when they look at it or not, depending on their types. Yeah, so morally might mean different things depending on what your epistemological system for determining it happens to be. Some would say there's no right or wrong, only emotions. And then I told her no based on okay, so what do you mean based on her experience? This is where we start running the foul shit again. Remember, she didn't have any experience. You told her a story. You're saying, no, but based on the NI example of experience in the story, her experience was actually listening to the story. And if you've got the hypothesis, then should be if you're SI polar and I ask you details about the story that you've heard once, that you might not retain them. That's the hypothesis. Okay, but that's not experience, though. Well, this is exactly what you ran afoul of with me, right? I didn't even understand what you were talking about. Because what you're asking a person to do is to conflate the idea of a character in a story and yourself. You're saying, pretend you don't have intuition independent of the character in the story. But that's not meaningfully possible. So I don't buy your distinction between experience is actual experience. You can't plug in as a substitute a character in a story and say, now if you link to that character in the story's experience, then you are an experiential focused person. And if you link to things outside of that, then you're focusing on non-experiential things, because it's like the difference between your experience and that which is not your experience is whether or not it's been basically digitized, reduced to a symbolic version of itself or communicative version, or whether it's a non-communicative version. A story is necessarily a communicative version of experience. So it's not, that means we wouldn't call it experience, therefore, in typology, we call it a time object of some sort. Like, I might reference the fact that my dad went to the desert the other day, but I didn't actually experience it, right? I might reference the fact that the president said meow, or I might reference the fact that the presidency is an office intended to meow. You might say this is an SI frame of reference and this is an NI frame of reference, but everybody does both, including ESTJs and ESFJs. So my dad will talk about those kind of NI things frequently, but it's usually about, well, when the Turks came to blah, 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 they're determined they were blah, blah, blah. You could say it's examples more than it is set analysis, but it's not correct to say that it's his own experience he talks about all the time. He plenty of times is not talking about his own experience at all, right? No, the person is going through the simulation they are experiencing. Okay, so what elements? So I use both elements from outside the story and elements from inside the story, right? Because I said I took stuff like I know that a lot of people get their prescriptions filled around the beginning of the month. Okay, so is that actually true? I don't know, but that's an NI kind of a thing. It was not said in the story, right? I didn't glean that from the story itself. So what my position is you're probably right that that ESFJs and ESTJs will struggle to come up with a scenario precisely because they have trouble drawing on those things they know and mixing them in with things that they have on the experiential realm. Maybe you're right about this, actually. Maybe you're right about this completely. The more I think about it, I get what you're saying, and there is a clear distinction to be made between experience, that which they experienced in the story, and that's which they bring as a frame of reference and or a bunch of stuff, relevant stuff they know, and how much they apply that in their explanation could very well be quite revelatory about the relationship between SI and NI. So this is something I keep, look, this is the thing. I want to concede something right off the bat. You're trying to do something that is fundamentally more important than what I'm trying to do in some regard, which is you're trying to get a standardized way to do this, a standardizable, repeatable, predictable, data gatherable form of this thing that you can hammer into something meaningfully successful. And the thing is, you've got a lot of great ideas about this, about about what's going on here, because I would not have considered that at all. I would not have considered that over what failed test? What test did I fail? What test did I fail? Is it just me or Eric overly defensive about his failed test? I didn't fail any test. I think you're probably right now that I thought it out. This is what I will say though. You are terrible at communicating what you mean to me. I have to do a lot of work to figure out what you're getting at. Okay. But I think it makes a lot of sense that, if we're right about cognitive functions, it would logically follow that SI polar people would probably have the fewest. Well, I guess I'm sorry. It logically follows at least that NI polar people would have difficulty drawing from external truths to add to the experienced set of data they're given to create a scenario. That makes a lot of sense. And it is a reasonable and clear, bright line between stuff that they know from the story that's given to them and stuff they know that's not in the story. So that's a nice, clear, bright line. I like things that provide that, right? A clear, bright line that we can draw distinctions upon that is indisputable, whether something came from the story or not. So it's like the fact that I knew I incorporated the fact that or that I created, I guess, something that resonated as mostly true, or sort of true anyway, which is that like people who are dressed very casually in beachwear, more like homelessy or whatever, are more likely to have drugs around or do drugs or have drug problems. That's an NI thing that I brought into my explanation. That people get their drugs the same time of month every month is an NI thing that I brought in. That and then the other thing is, like, you say at the beginning that it's the hottest, it's a very hot time of year. Now I'm curious as to if you were to stretch it out, say 8 months, how many people are going to how many people are going to factor in the hotness? How many people are going to mistakenly factor in the hotness, not noting the passage of time? So in other words, 8 months later, it's not still going to be the same hotness. It's not going to be that hot every month, that day for 8 months in a row. So it can't be the hotness that's a factor. And yet these people are still wearing the same kind of clothes, despite the fact that the weather's bound to change. You're not giving any updates on the hotness, right? So I'd be very interested to see how that plays out in the mix. However, I don't think the extra element of whether or not you are being suspected of the murders is a good addition. I think that it adds another frame of reference that might allow somebody's workarounds to squeeze some extra shit into there, I would suggest. But yeah, I think that's very interesting. And then the idea is, of course, your SI polar people won't be able to remember minor details from the story after just hearing it read aloud. Presumably, ENFJs would do better on it than ENTJs because they are more in the communicative realm. I've noticed before, and this is one other thing that makes me think, in part, that that lady might be ENTJ, is that what was I going to say just now? Oh, she was much more effective processing language when it was seen than when it was heard, and this I've found is generally true for ENTJs. So this is the thing. I mean, I agree. Her NI, according to the rat test, was very high. So in IDOM wouldn't be impossible to conceive of. I've not found it the case, however, that ENTJ TI tests better than INTJ TI. And I think what this has to do with is the video I just made about the agent subject object thing. So it's like when we are testing somebody's TI, we're saying do object TI in a spot where TI naturally goes. In other words, you be the object, I'm going to be the subject. And then we're saying to them after that, you know, tell me the answer. So it's basically how well are you being an object here? The thing about that is you focus on beer. It's reliable. It's very, very reliable. So it's like as far as the object thing goes, TI is most comfortable on as an it positions itself as the object. It's not creating information. It's not knowing things. It's instead receiving and processing. So in that regard, it's the object of the action. And for somebody who's like for me with TI polar, it means that I'm not comfortable with my inherent objectness, which is to say that as any object, I'm vulnerable to action. Action can be taken upon me. I tend to want to convert that into a different kind of object, which is to say, well, I can understand my body as an object on the external metaphysical field, like I can understand my body as subject to external things that force me to experience certain things, whether I want it or not. A king's toe being surly.
What's now?
Not much. Well, he's, Rachel, I hope that you and I never forget to say hi to each other in the morning and spell it HIGH.
Me too. We're on the same page.
Okay, well, that's fine. Let's see. I don't know. I have no idea. A dick kick. Yeah, that's probably it. Dick kicks, but this isn't really quite right because it's SB kicks. They'll be shoes anyway. So okay. oh my, you're going to think I'm childish for your age, so I won't say how old you are. Well, you can't be more childish for your age than I am for my age. Oh says all types can be still accounted for, but I'm thinking due to this, there may be some special cases that if it would be able to be addressed. I mean, look, the point is, let's set sort of, if possible, some reasonable goals here, which is what I would suggest you want to do is to create a test that can actually be applied to test people without a person asking them questions, and that doesn't take forever to take, and or that isn't super complicated to grade, so to speak, that you can code it easily enough and come up with something preferable to all the existing stuff right now. And if you want to collaborate on that, we can do that. And this is where you're going to need some help on that. First of all, you got to factor in the reader's experience. Okay, you really need an editor. Second of all, you're going to have to convert these open-ended questions into something that's not open-ended, right? Like, you're going to have to convert the questions that have open-ended answers into some kind of multiple choice or ordinality thing. I like using ordinality in the sense that you go rank these things 1 through 8, then they can only use each number one time. Or also, I like the idea. Okay, fine. I'm brainstorming here. Okay, because I find that I've got some new strategies to approach things that I can test out, and we can cross reference. So I've got 2 strategies for testing NI. One of them is this scenario creation thing. I don't think you're going to need to give them nearly as many facts as you do in your murder story. That's way too long. The thing is, I can cross-reference that against the rat, and we have a test subject. So we'd like to test this sort of formally and officially, make some predictions now in advance, with the idea that we're going to test this person and see if we're correct. So my prediction, Rachel's sister is an ESFJ. I'm quite confident about that. Rachel's quite confident about that. And this is just from me never having formally tested her, but having interacted with her enough and having been married to an ESFJ and being in the same quadra, and she's an ESFJ. So in other words, another way to put this is as follows. Basically what it means is after the test, I'm not going to claim, well, maybe she wasn't an ESFJ. If this test if the predictions are actually met, then it will simply uphold the existing conclusions. If they are not met, it will to some extent falsify the existing conclusions. Okay? And specifically, we're going to have Rachel's ESFJ take the rat test, and I'll give her the scenario test, and we'll see how she does on both.
This is perfect because my mom wants to rope me into a Zoom call because my sister is flying down to my mom for a few days, so we can get her to do the tests then.
Okay, so
actually,
that'd be great.
Even both.
Sure, yeah, that'd be great. They're both in bipolar. So sounds good. Look, the key thing here is from a community wellness perspective, frankly, as much as anything else, there needs to be a general agreement that the fundamental principles I lay out of a prime directive, of 4 fields, of 4 kinds of functions and also of 3 perspectives, agent, object, subject, that those mechanics and the put, get, receive stuff, those things are right in the basics. And then people will figure out all the details accordingly and stuff. As a community, we need to agree to that. So, because we won't get any further along the line of typology being taken seriously until we can all agree that we're going to try to that we've now successfully eliminated most of the bullshit. We've come up with an actual model that actually has an architecture to it and mechanics to it that makes sense. So once the community as a whole can agree on that, then I'm quite confident that typology will, explode. So the thing is, this is why I'm getting at. Oh, I'm not done yet. So this is why I appreciate because he's the first person who's come in and taken this approach with me, where he says, "Okay, you got it right, but there's all these holes. What's going on, Eric?" I said, "I know there's all these holes. I've been saying that for a long time. I was like, I've got it right, but nobody else is basing shit off of it, right?" So, in fact, everybody who else has learned stuff from me a lot, in order to distinguish themselves, always tries to differentiate their understanding from mine, rather than saying, "No, my understanding is derived from Eric's basic principles and model, and I have done this work on based from that thing," because the thing is, it's only a TWFP approach that adequately constrains those who would do work. So what you saw today is come in and talk to me about this test, supposedly test SI polar and NI polar. I'm very skeptical, and yet at the end of hammering him on it, I conclude that he's probably right, but it remains to be seen. So it's like you get actually somebody who's going to usefully engage with you about your ideas. If you have good ideas about stuff, even if they are presented in effy horrible ways and TI disregarding ways, nevertheless, you're going to get a real hearing from me, and you're going to get and if it's worth something, and if it's right, and you get full credit from me about that. I'm not here to be contrary. The problem is, so many people come in here and they say, "Well, I'm not going to concede the basic architecture, because that would suggest that you actually did what you said you did, Eric, is that you fixed it. You fixed oceanography, you figured it out. And we don't want to concede that, so we're never going to agree to that basic thing. We can't go forward until we do agree with that." Now, let me answer this question somebody asked here. Joey says, would you even admit it if you mistyped Rachel, though? I did mistype her, and I did admit it. About a month after I had mistyped her, I had a lot more time spending with her, and I realized I had mistyped her as an ENFJ. And she is not an ENFJ because she had just too much SI going on. And so I had to, it was easier to admit to the world than it was to Rachel. It was like, "Oh, Rachel, I got something I got to tell you. I mistyped you."
Yeah, but now everything makes sense.
When you hit water, but stop digging. I'm not sure. Well, there's definitely miscommunication, even though you're in the chat, because it is clear frequently you're not understanding the question I'm asking, because you're answering a different question. So you're not giving me what I'm looking for anyway,
So were you thinking that Amy may be an INTJ?
That's what OOO is saying. And if she's not an ENTJ, that would seem the most logical other type.
Yeah. I still see ENTJ. That's just my personal opinion, because I thought for SI, she knew I almost felt that she knew the questions were coming, because you ask those questions every single time you test. So I was like, she just seems so hard to want to do good.
But it doesn't seem like so she prepared for it. I don't believe that. I mean, she clearly didn't prep for
No,
TI questions, and I don't think she'd ever seen the rat questions before.
No. But there was just like something about like the SI. Like I could tell like it was a struggle instead of a pleasure.
Okay, Tiny Man 66 has asked me to pull some cards for her, so really quickly. I'm gonna do the flame within that never goes out. That's your first card. The flame within that never goes out. We've got the flame without that burns you. The flame without that burns you. The flame without that fuels you. And then the flames of your heart and your mind. So this is a fire themed tarot reading. The flame that never goes out, the external flame that burns, the external flame that motivates, the flame of your heart and the flame of your mind. No, I don't use cards when I type somebody. This is the internal flame that never goes out. The precious little twinkling flame within. Okay? The core of your soul. It's 4 of sticks. And what does that mean? You like to pick grapes.
Harmony.
It's just that simple.
Hello,
There's not a lot of metaphorical meaning here. This card literally means you like to pick grapes.
The P and the P is here, everyone.
Picking grapes is how Tiny Man keeps the core flame of her heart, core flame of her soul alive. All right, now this is the flame without that burns.
Ooh.
King of Cups. Ooh. Is there some handsome hunk of a man who's toying with your emotions using his kingly coupley ways?
Wow.
Shame on you, King of Cups. That's the flame without the burns. Now, here's the flame without the motivates. Ooh, the Emperor. So you don't want your King of Cups. You want an Emperor. You don't want somebody who's the king of moistures and emotions. You want somebody who's the king of intuitions, right? Or what is this guy the king of?
The material world.
The material world.
Yeah,
he's the
king of all kings.
He's the king of kings.
Yeah.
That means he's Jesus.
Archangel King has been birthed.
Now, this one is the flame of your heart.
Is Pee-pee Straw.
The moon.
Yay.
This suggests to me, flame of your heart being the moon, that you are still in a state of illusion about what love really is. Will you ever do like workshops on public speaking regarding typology? Sure. I mean, I'll do what happens, I'll do whatever. This is the flame of your mind.
Ooh.
So you're practical in your minding of things, making sure that your Egyptian peasants continue building pyramids for you in the background. And yeah, there you go. That's your reading, Tiny Man 66.
Can I have a reading?
Of course. Would you like that too?
Sure.
6. So those were flames, though. We have to do all the elements.
Ooh, okay.
And it's not normal, and maybe not the normal elements you might know. This is going to be the word.
Ooh.
Your soul word. The external word that burns. The external word that inspires. The word of your heart. And the word of your mind.
Yes, Daddy's pulling cards for Mommy.
Okay, so the word of your soul. Queen of Wands.
Oh.
Queen of Wands.
I like to get creative with it.
No, I don't use your SE test. That's true. Well, one thing you have to keep in mind is you and I have a fundamentally different purpose for typing people. My primary goal is to make sure that the client feels as though they've gotten their money's worth, and I've done a good job of giving them both a correct typing and an enjoyable experience. Okay, so when you want me to type somebody in meow way or meow way, maybe it would have. And the other thing is I am going to incorporate some of your stuff, and I'm going to do things the way I've done before, by and large. I'm going to incorporate things little bit by little bit, because unlike you, I am very avoidant of a rush to judgment, which is to say, I don't want to put faith in something that's not thoroughly tested yet by me, in my experience. That may be because I'm an SI user instead of an NI user. But foremost, remember that, okay, well, says, I've had wonderful experiences with my test. People are usually amazed. I've been doing this for a long time. Okay. At no point am I looking for anybody to come in and tell me how to type differently. So I love being able to incorporate some of your typing, how to type ideas, into my typing sessions. And I encourage everyone to type however they want to type people. But my point is, what's most pleasing to me about is that he begins from the right spot, which is, okay, now we can agree on this set of basic principles and understandings and mechanics, and then people can work off of that. Great. Then I can actually talk to you, because I can talk to him about typology. We can talk about where that meaningfully meows to meow, because we have the same understanding of it. But I hate having arguments about typology with people who don't operate from this frame of reference, because we don't have the same, we can't talk about it meaningfully. And they're wrong and I'm right, which is even worse, means we can't even talk about it politely. All right, now, sorry for the interruption, Rachel. This is the word of the external word that burns.
Ooh.
I would suggest that you only feel that you get burned when it's known externally. The word is known externally.
Yeah.
Raymond Munez, I'll talk about that in 1 second. This is the word that inspires.
Ooh.
The fool.
Oh, wow.
So I'd say words that are designed to entertain, inspire. And this is the word of your heart. The sun.
The sun. How nice.
And this is the word of your mind. The high priestess.
The high priestess. I was kind of intuiting that I might get the high priestess in this reading. Oh, I'm glowing. Thank you for that reading, host Eric.
Sure, darling. So the answer to your SE test question is, I don't know. I'm not that fast at processing new things. So I didn't, it's like, I knew I wasn't going to, when I'm bored with my new toys, then I'll look at the next thing I need to have a new toy for. Right now, I don't necessarily need an SE test to be definitive about things, as definitive as I can be. And I'm not disputing that I could be more successful at being definitive faster or something. But I remind you that this is not simply a something where I'm looking to get their type done as quickly as possible and send them on their way. I'm getting to know the person. I'm having a shared experience with them. I'm providing for them my full attention on all levels, So it's like, that's the product they're buying. And that's the product I'm selling. Okay, so there's one other question I wanted to answer, though, which I said I was going to answer, which was, money. Money isn't real. Raymond Muniz. In some sense, you're right. Wealth is real, though. And wealth is best described as the quality of beholdens that is attained when useful work is done for another. So in other words, when I help you paint your house, then when I need a ride to the doctor's office, you say, okay, no problem, I'll drive you there because you owe me one, right? Quote unquote. So when people say that money, all money is debt, in some sense they're correct, but the problem with that idea is that the reason it seems that way is because we don't understand that, in fact, just because all wealth is beholden, it doesn't mean that that it doesn't link to something more concrete like resources. So to be beheld in some fashion is to say, okay, well, now instead of helping me take me to the doctor's office, instead give me 10% of your wheat yield this year because I need to eat. That's a way of being useful. It's also a way of creating what you would call genuine resource wealth, which is something like crude oil that can be converted directly into energy that empowers you, or food, which converted directly into energy that empowers you. For the most wealthy people, the reason they are the most wealthy in a just society is because they have created the most utility for other people. The extent to which creation of utility for others links to wealth, or is proportional to wealth, is one of the only and best non-rights-based understanding of justice that, or definition of justice I can come up with. In some places like North Korea, the amount of utility you provide for other people and the success you experience accordingly are not linked. Kim Jong-un is not the wealthiest person in North Korea because he's the most useful person in North Korea. He's the wealthiest because he's the most willing to engage in plunder, which is to say, he didn't earn any of his wealth. Now, contrast that with somebody like Bill Gates. It's interesting how FI people, okay. Oh. Listen. I have at the moment 1% faith that you and your test are more successful typing people than me typing people. 2, I don't have a test. I have a bunch of strategies I use to type somebody. Right? So to say that since my test is not able to test all types and this logically fails is to misunderstand what I'm doing, to claim I have something I don't, and to not understand the meaning of the word logical. So, I mean, like, and I want to again point out that this is the best reason to come around here and acknowledge the primacy of this basic construct and do your work here accordingly. Because you can be like, oh, and it doesn't matter how like incredibly rude and presumptuous you are. That doesn't matter. Your ideas will still be judged on their merits. I have an assortment of different strategies that I use to engage with a human being for an hour face to face, having a conversation with somebody, right? Asking them questions, getting to know them. You might claim that if I asked a different set of questions and engage them in a different way during that however long I spend with them, that I would get better results. But you don't really have any good warrant for that. Hello? Hi, Dad. You ready? Okay, so pick you up at 5 minutes until 7, right where I dropped you off. Right, so in about 30 minutes. So in about 30 minutes or 40 minutes, right? All right, I'll see you there. All right, cool. Bye. Okay, but see, you don't get it. I am interacting with a human being. The thing is, there's lots of stuff I ask that I don't know what I'm asking it for. I don't know why I'm asking it. I'm just going with my gut, And it is not necessarily the case that a typing session with me is better when it's more regimented in the fashion that you're saying. Remember also that I'm making a video that may or may not be published. So you might not like the way I type people, or you might not think that it's the most effective way to get the type, but that remains to be seen. If in fact your approach would consistently be more successful in typing people than mine. And we'd have to look at that over time. So we'd have to disagree on a few different people across time. And then we'd look at comparables and see, okay, I'm less consistent here and you're right. Or, it has to be something like that. So says, what I'm saying is your approach doesn't even account for what you say you're trying to do, because if a person who's an INTP tells you, no, I'm this, I already know you're going nowhere with this, because that warrant is ridiculous. If a person tells me that, it doesn't have any impact on me. This is what I mean by you do not communicate well. Because if a person who is an INTP tells me, Eric, that, no, I am, you cannot offer anything other than an equally possible perspective. Well, that's not true, though, obviously. So I can say you're definitely not INTP because of, INTPs do this, and other people do, A person I typed as INTP said he was a what? And the person who came back, who I said was an INTP, came back and said maybe he's an INFP or maybe he's an ENTP or something. If it's INFP, I actually think I'd be more well equipped now, thanks to the FI stuff that we've talked about, to make that distinction. But the point is, remember, a test or an approach that can get 100% accuracy on 80% of the people is better than a test that gets 80% accuracy on 100% of the people. Okay? So there are instances where I don't have 100%. You are correct. And as I've explained, and the whole reason, in fact, why you're saying this is because I've said to you before, and you've heard before, me express that the reason I can't be at 100% is because I lack adequate amount of polar tests for meow, which is why you are attempting to come up with them. You are claiming to have successfully come up with them. You have no business making those claims. No business whatsoever making those claims. But I get it. You're enthusiastic about it. You trust your intuition. This is right. I don't trust your intuition. Fortunately, my intuition is better. Now, I'm not saying I think you're wrong about whatever, but my intuition in general, I trust a lot more than yours. I've already seen you make extraordinarily bold claims that you've had to backtrack from almost immediately, multiple occasions. So I know that at least when it comes to understanding what Scopos claim I can substantiate, my intuition is much better. But look, I hope you are correct that that we can, in fact, get something that is totally defensible, falsifiable. Remember, for you to make those bold claims and defend them, it needs to be something falsifiable. So, in other words, you need to set a scenario by which you're wrong. How do we prove you wrong? That's the job of whoever is going to be making bold claims. Is, if you're saying this definitively does this, then expect people to say, okay, well, what would it look like if you were wrong? In other words, what test can I do to establish you're right or wrong? So the thing that we're planning to do here, we're planning to test the following hypotheses: that both the rat test and the scenario creation or scenario explanation test can be used to effectively slot NI, especially for polar. So we're just testing the one hypothesis, though, that a polar SI person that we know is polar SI before we test them, which is not, we don't have many such people in our lives, right? But we do have a couple, so we're going to take advantage of this. That we make a prediction that they will be more or less unable to answer any of the questions on the rat test, and that they will be more or less unable to come up with any scenario or any explanation for the facts and evidence, a scenario that explains them. Now, what comprises coming up with? Weird, Water Zero. Oh my gosh. That's so strange, because I was just talking about how to falsify claims. And you say the idea that we should falsify claims is hopelessly stupid. I mean, I can't think of anything you could say that would more clearly indicate that you, Water Zero, are describing yourself when you say hopelessly stupid. Because to say that while I'm in the middle of explaining how to justify something with falsification, you said it best. It's hopelessly stupid. It's hopelessly stupid. So, for example, if I have a hypothesis, make a prediction, and we test that prediction to see if it's correct, as we're going to. We're going to test possibly 2 SI polar people. If what we're saying is bullshit, then they won't get the results we anticipate, that we predict. No, 0, 0, 0, 0. So again, this is like incredibly dumb of you. One methodology we know from experience produces very good results, close to 100%, and at least 80 to 85% or 90% of people I type. And that there are some people I type that I'm less sure of. Now, you're talking about making some changes that you say are consistent with the ideation, and that these approaches to testing the same mechanics are going to work better. Okay, maybe. We'll see. Now, if you're saying, well, how are we going to know if it works better? Like I described to you what we'd have to do. We have to find specific people about which we disagree. Over time, collect an assortment of those, and then look at those videos again and do some dialectic and say, and be honest and say, okay, well, you know what? Actually, I think you're right about this, or whatever. But most importantly, from my perspective, you need to learn to stop making premature claims. So you might be right, but as far as what's a baseline, well, the baseline is obviously the one we have the data on. It's not the one you want it to be. You know? Okay, so I am ready to wrap this up. I didn't say anything about trust. I didn't say anything about trust at all. There's no trust involved here. I'm saying you said we should use your test as the ground should be my test framework, which is in line with your goal. Okay, well, I don't know what you mean by ground, but number one, most important thing, remember, stop thinking that I frame shit through goals. I consider that lesser level being. No offense. It's like ontological serfdom. No, you are You are framing it with a goal. I'm framing the whole thing through correctness. My point is not to find that we are best served by coming up with a test that is 100% of typing people. My point is we are best served when we are careful not to overclaim. That we always err on the side of caution, as good thinkers do. Why did you phrase it this way? In my opinion, people shouldn't be allowed to pay you for an hour of your time, and even more than an hour. No, you are the one who is conflating things. You are assuming everybody must go through your goal-oriented framework. I claim to be the best typologist available at the moment, and continue to claim that. A lot of people also want it to be typed by me, probably because they want their video put up. I don't know. I mean, I'm overclaiming by the fact that you make an incomplete test? No, stupid. At the end of a session, I'll tell people how certain I am usually. That's a claim. If you want to say I'm overclaiming, you point to that and say, you said you made these claims, but you can't support them. I've pointed to plenty of examples of claims you've made you can't support or substantiate. So no, you're not thinking well. And I'm not going to coddle you in that. Stop talking about my goals. I don't give a fuck about your understanding of my goals. Do you understand that? My goal is for you to take your goal orientation and shove it up your fucking ass. That's my goal. Okay, how can I type better? How should I change typology in order to successfully attain my goal of shoving your goal orientation up your ass? Help me. Please help me figure out the TE on this. How can I more thoroughly and effectively shove your goal orientation up your fucking stupid ass? Can you help me with that TE? I could use a little help. Anybody else want to toss in some TE here? I need some help. Unfortunately, has a goal framework that's pissing me off. And I need to shove it up his ass better. Further, harder, deeper. Anybody got any TE pointers? I got to go pick up my dad from the airport. Fuck, I'm going to be late. Not the airport, the hospital. He got an operation. All right, so anyway, I got to go pick him up because I picked him up at 6:50. And yeah, it's just about time. All right, so I hope that's clear. That I don't care about your goal framing of everything. And no, you're trying to pass judgment on me and say I'm doing something immoral because I don't frame the mechanism of ethicality through your goal orientation. I mean, that's the very foundation of wickedness itself. That's utilitarianism. In a nutshell, you're saying, no, we need to be more utilitarian in our moral calculi as well. That somehow I'm doing something wrong because I'm not framing things through that. I mean, fuck off. Talk about evil. Utilitarianism is the root of all evil. So fuck you.